So over the course of the year, you are going to be building all over this mannequin. Different body systems, different structures. It's going to be very detailed by the time you're done. But you will be very often using brown clay or terracotta clay. That's because the brown clay indicates usually muscles. And we're going to talk just for a second about a key thing that you need to do on muscles that is consistent across the board. First thing, I'm going to take a chunk of muscle because in one of the first assignments that we do, we are going to build the temporalis muscle. So you're going to take a small chunk of clay. This one's about right. If I had a larger piece of clay, I would either have to tear one off or use the putty knife to get that chunk off, but I found this one that's about right. I'm going to go ahead and try to flatten this piece out, and basically it should be like a strangely sliced pizza. It's going to go underneath the zygomatic arch, down to the mandible, and it's going to fan out across the top of the head. So I'm going to take the piece of clay and kind of hold it up, and it looks like my clay is a little too thick, a little too much, so I'm going to take some off. It's much easier to take away clay and still make it look right than it is to add clay on later. So I'm going to round this up and flatten it out. Using the heel of my hand, I can quickly get a pretty uniform piece. And I'm going to take this circular disc and try to start to pinch one edge together, because that's the edge that's going to end up going deep to the zygomatic arch. So I'm going to keep pinching it together and then flattening that little piece back out with my hands. Haven't touched a tool yet, so keep that in mind. Not everything needs to be done with the tools. It's going to be much quicker for you to do it with your hands. So I have a rough shape that's about to work, and I'm going to go ahead and try it out. Just about the right thickness, comes all the way down where it's supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and fold this down on the skull. So a little too much, not quite the right shape. So I'm going to start to push this around and flatten this out. I'm way too far superior, way not in the right spots, but the beauty about the clay is that I can reshape it. And so my preferred method is to throw on more clay than I need, and then now I'm going to follow up with a wire tool, and I'm going to start shaping this the way it needs to be. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking some off the top, and it comes off very easily. You don't have to push down really hard and scratch the mannequin, but I'm just going to start taking the clay off that I don't need. You can either use either side of the wire tool, but it strips that off very easily. And then I can use my finger to help wipe up some of the excess as well. And really, there shouldn't be a lot on your mannequin throughout the year. There shouldn't be a ton of super hard lines on the mannequin. Most of the time, things in the human body do not end at 90-degree angles. Most of the time, things fan out into fascia, things like that. So I'm going to put my mannequin's temporalis muscle on and kind of try to make sure that the edge of the muscle fans out. Here's the other thing I want to show you, and this concept is pretty key. Basically, muscles get shorter. That's their job. When they get shorter, they cause things to move. So when you draw the lines or the pennations on muscle, not striations. Striations are microscopic. These are visual things that you can see. These are muscle fibers. The organization really connects the end to end, the origin to the insertion of the muscle. This muscle originates across the side of the skull. It inserts into the mandible. So basically, I want to connect, I want to draw lines with my wire tool. I'm going to etch pennations in from origin to insertion across the entire muscle. This is called a unipennate muscle. So basically, everything kind of starts at one side and goes to the other. So I'm not going to carve really deep. I'm just going to drag my wire tool down across the muscle, and I'm going to fan out from the edge, always coming back to this singular point. I'm going to go across the entire perimeter of the origin, but always coming down to the point of this insertion. So this is not correct, because basically what you're saying there is this muscle tries to fold the skull in half, tries to fold it down on itself. That's not true. Everything should be coming down towards this insertion point. The insertion point is the part that's supposed to move. And this doesn't have to be surgically precise, but it should indicate that you understand how this muscle is organized. And by fanning it out across the origin, bringing everything down to the insertion, you're doing what you're supposed to do. Obviously, everything's going to converge at one point, so things are going to get sloppy down here, but that's the idea. You're indicating to me that you understand what a muscle does, how to put one on, and how to connect it and demonstrate that this is how it works. These pennations are things that you should do anytime you put a muscle on. Now, when you're doing the digestive system, smooth muscle and that type of thing, let's not worry about that. But anytime you're going to put muscles on this mannequin, you should do that. So for the rest of this lesson in identity, where you make the orbicularis oculi and oris, you should do that. When we get to the power unit and you start putting muscles on here, it should have pennations. Basically, you need to research using the Essential Anatomy apps how to connect, or what the origin is, what the insertion is, and then connect those 2 points using the wire tool in the clay. Pretty straightforward, but it's something you'll do all year. So make sure that you're doing it correctly. Notice I didn't use either of these tools. I didn't have to use this one. All this required was my hands and the wire tool. So use your tools wisely. You'll be able to get this done quickly and accurately. Make sure you follow all the rest of the directions for how to do the muscles, because while this is a pretty straightforward unipennate muscle, when you start to get to circular sphincter muscles, the pennations are a little bit different. Same concept, but you just have to think about basically what that muscle does. So pay attention to that. All right, good job.